Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Voices of Inclusion. I am so excited to have my friend Kristen Bentley here today. It's funny, when we got on the call, I was like, where are you? Because Kristen's always in a new place. Kristen is my friend and my colleague, and I was lucky to meet Kristen probably about 3 or 4 years ago when I was building my team of facilitators to do Jedi work. And Kristen came very highly recommended by many CTI faculty and other coaches. So, Kristen, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with me today. Please take a moment and introduce yourself.
Thanks, Priya. I'm so excited to be here with you too. And I'll I'll start off by being real. I wasn't expecting this to be recorded, and so here I am.
Right.
Right, yeah. What do I want to say about myself? A little piece. So I am, as you mentioned, CTI faculty. I am CTI faculty, which is the Coactive Training Institute. And this is my second career. Previous to that, I was an optometrist for 16 years. And when I fell into coaching, it felt like it was, and I literally fell into it. It felt like it was the career that I was meant to have. And part of the piece that I just want to share related to who I coach and the current, how my brand is currently evolving as it relates to the topic that we're going to be talking about in inclusion, is so I've gone through a few iterations of the brand. I started off with working with burnt out healthcare professionals because that's what I was. And then it evolved to something called Whole Life Leadership, which is my current website. And more recently, as a result of my own work around anti-racism and anti-oppression, which I, again, fell into, or it found me in around 2016, 2017, I'm rebranding and I'm calling it Emergent Wellbeing Coaching, where the well-being of one is linked to the well-being of all. And that includes all people, species, and planet. Because I really believe that part of how we relate to ourselves and each other is related to how we've been conditioned, related to capitalism and colonization, where we've been taught to exploit our own inner resources and others' resources. And so the work that I do is really on the one-on-one place of people learning how to create a regenerative relationship with themselves, how to recognize where they've internalized the messages of how to relate to ourselves and how to relate to others. And that brings in a systemic and social analysis into my coaching. So this is a topic that I'm deeply passionate about and a lifelong learner around too.
Thank you. This approach in coaching is so deeply and desperately needed. I am not surprised to hear that you're doing this work and that it has found you and you found it. I think I think it would be a real gift to do that, and to engage with you on that. And I'm not surprised that in our first 2 minutes of this call, we've already gone deep. So, um, because as you know, like I just believe that that's where the real wisdom lies, is way under the waterline, and
Yeah,
that it's easy to swim on the surface, but going down deep is really where the gifts are.
yeah,
So in this conversation with me, are you willing to go there?
absolutely.
I thought so. I
I
thought so.
wouldn't have it any other way.
I know, I know. I think that's probably why you and I found each other, because it's
Exactly.
like, okay, we can go and we can take a big deep breath and go and we're safe.
Yeah.
Um, okay, here's where I want to start with you.
Mhm.
I believe, and I think you know this about me, that everyone influences the people around them. It's like very much akin to what you were talking about, that reciprocation with nature and
Yeah.
species and the
Mhm.
planet.
Yeah.
So just by existing in the world, whether we like it or not, we are leaders.
Mhm.
Question for you is, what kind of leader are you?
Ooh. Oh. Hmm. There's so much to that answer. Um, well, it's funny because the first word that comes is inclusive. Um, but there's a funny story that goes back to my childhood related to this, that I feel like I am where I am as a leader now, and there were seeds of that as a young girl. And I grew up, my voice is going to get shaky related to this, but I grew up in a small town in Northern Ontario. I know you, Sudbury, you'll recognize it, but not all of your viewers will. But it's a small mining town in Northern Ontario, not very diverse. But I had moments in my childhood where many moments where like the people, the children, even just playing with in the classroom that weren't included, that were on the margins, that were outcast. I was always one that wanted to bring those people in. And I have a pivotal moment in my life where there was a person, a friend of mine that I had made friends with and started to play with, and she was a refugee from Vietnam. And because this is recorded, I'm not going to say who in my life, but it was very clear. It was made very clear to me that that friendship was not okay.
Mm.
And I found that as a result of that, I started to behave in ways that were expected of me from outside that really weren't authentic to me. And it was through coaching that I found that part of me again. And in a larger way that um, I really, I want all voices heard. I want everyone included. I keep wanting to say that word, but I actually want to share a quote because I just shared this before my call, like with somebody that I was just speaking to. So let me find it, because this is the type of inclusion that I've learned is really important. And this is the type of leader I've become to take a stand for this. Uh, Let me find it. This is a quote by Rennie Edo Lodge, and I might not be saying her name properly, but the author of Why I'm No Longer Talking to White People About Race. Um, the quote is, "I don't want to be included. Instead, I want to question who created the standard in the first place. After a lifetime of embodying difference, I have no desire to be equal. I want to deconstruct the structural power of a system that marked me out as different. I don't wish to be assimilated into the status quo. I want to be liberated from all the negative assumptions that my characteristics bring. The same onus is not on me to change. Instead, it's the world around me." And so I think that piece, like, what kind of leader am I, is that, like, I really passionately care about being a voice for systemic change in the systems that I'm a part of, because we can't create inclusion and diverse ways of thinking and diversity of identity without expanding the system's capacity to make safety for people to show up. And I think another story that I just want to share, I just recently led with a couple folks who, it was in our work, we do co-leadership. And through our conversations behind the scenes, I learned on a deeper and deeper level how much work some people have to do just to show up and
Mm.
lead. Yeah. That their very presence brushes up against the edge of what some people can be with and stretches the space, but it was like such an eye-opening. And so again, if I come back to your question, because I keep sharing stories, but it's like, it's so important to me to be the person that has that person's back so
Mm.
that they can show up and so that they don't have to do as much work in the spaces that they lead in. Yeah, I'll pause there.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I'm gonna make an assumption, and I'm gonna share that assumption with you, which is I imagine you've had to truly understand your position in the world
Mhm.
to recognize that you can be a vessel for providing that kind of safety
Yeah.
for people who are on the edge.
Yeah. And sometimes I'm the one in need of safety too, right?
Sure.
And
Yeah.
this is one thing that I learned through doing my work is like related to my gender. I minimized the experience that I had as a female in my life until I started to unpack like what that actually means and how I show up differently in different spaces or with different people that I'm leading with, that when I feel safe, I will show all parts of me and I'll feel like I've got full permission around things. But when there are certain people where I feel like I've got to tone down certain parts of me or be smarter or not be too sexy but be attractive and like all this like inner
Yes.
game that I have to dance between, it's like I was unaware of all of that work that I was doing.
Yeah, it's
Mhm.
amazing, right? It's
Yeah,
amazing. And the more I'm with you on this because I've recently had experience where I come to the conclusion that this some of it has a lot to do with my position and my social identity, and so much of it is also just energetic.
yeah,
And I can't always say why I don't feel safe
yeah,
in certain spaces.
yeah,
It's truly an energy, it's a conditional thing, and
yeah,
I don't know, I can't always and I don't always have to put my finger on it, but I do have to claim my position to say, "I'm not safe," or "I am safe," and have that conversation with myself.
yeah, yeah. And part of the piece of my continued learning, I've been studying Peter Lean's work, somatic experiencing, so trauma healing,
Yeah. Oh, I
and
love
then
it.
yeah, and then also under Thomas Hubel, trauma informed coaching consulting from an intergenerational and collective space. And you're speaking to that body place that it's just 80% of the information comes from body up. And
Yeah.
it's so true that I don't know why, and I don't necessarily know or have to know why. And sometimes that actually gets in the way, but it's just trusting my body or listening to my body or giving space to that um gulp
So,
that
that
is
experience, yeah, yeah,
mhm, mhm, yeah.
amazing. How so given this perspective on leadership,
Mhm.
how do you want to be known?
Oh gosh. Hmm. Really interesting. And part of this is I'm like, is this so the conflating of my own adaptive strategies around my story. I said to you, before we got on that I'm an introvert, and some of that introversion is just, I think it's true and authentic. Um, where I like to be behind the scenes and more of a leader behind and empowering people. And then some of that is also just protective. It's like, oh, if I stay behind the scenes, it keeps me safe.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but I think I do really want to be known as um like someone who cares deeply about people, somebody who will have a voice on things that matter and will um, take the action that needs to be taken, and especially recognizing where I do have the privilege to speak. Um, and also somebody who um, I love having those like quiet but powerful ripples that really um the other metaphor that's coming up is like the wind beneath my wings type thing of like
Uh-huh.
just like supporting people to soar and having them feel seen and heard in a way that they don't get to be seen and heard in other spaces, like really creating an intimate bubble that then they can take out into the rest of their life.
Quiet and powerful ripples sounds
Mhm.
so perfect, so apt
Mhm.
for how I experience you. When I came on this call, even though it hasn't like it's again, it's an energetic thing. It feels calming and peaceful to be
Mhm.
with you, but also very powerful.
Mhm.
Um, okay, so if that's how you want to be known, I'm curious, what do people get wrong about you when they first meet
Ooh. Um, one of the uh the big ones that actually like has hit me in the heart is when I get feedback that I'm polished and put together. Um, like this impact of perfectionism, which
Mhm.
definitely I've grown out of, but I'm like so um feel opposite to that because I feel like so unpolished and so a work in progress and
Uh-huh.
forever um it- like I want to be seen more for my humility than for this
Yeah.
exterior. Yeah, and I'm also just really friggin' irreverent and down to earth.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, and just
Yeah.
and playful. Like I
Yeah, I see
yeah.
that. I've
Yeah.
been really clinging to this idea, maybe because it makes me feel safe, but I've
Mhm,
been clinging to this idea that people's perceptions of you are projections, right? So
mhm.
it's never personal,
Yeah.
but I would not, I'm frankly a little surprised at the
Mm,
feedback
mhm.
because of how I've experienced you is to be vulnerable and fallible.
Yeah.
And the projection is like, okay, look at this person,
Mhm,
right? What we do, what a projection is kind of is like, I'm comparing myself to you.
mhm.
If I hold you as a standard of perfection, then I'm going to accuse you of being perfect, right?
Yeah, 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 it's so true. And it's interesting because it's often the first impressions and how that feedback will come is once they see my vulnerability, they're like, oh, I thought this of
Yeah.
you. Or I find people will put me a bit on a pedestal
Yeah.
like of knowledge or expertise. And I so don't want to be on that
Yeah. I
pedestal.
was just
Yeah.
talking to my coach about that.
Mhm.
In our line, the line that we came up with that I now say to clients and is, I don't balance well on pedestals.
Ah,
You can take me off of that because I don't feel
ah,
safe up there. Like
yeah.
I don't balance well.
Yeah,
I can't stand here. Yeah.
yeah. Well, and I wonder if you and I share this because I find whenever I listen to you, reading your book, anything, I'm like, oh my gosh, Priya is so articulate and like so like just the way that you frame things and when we've worked together too. And in that sometimes I do. I'm like, oh, I aspire to be Priya. And that's the feedback that I get from
Yeah.
people too, is like the clarity that I bring or the way that I articulate things has them see me in a
Yeah.
certain light. And it's so funny because I don't see myself that way. Like I feel like I stumble on my words.
Yeah. It's
Hmm.
amazing. It's information, right? It's
Yeah.
yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
Okay, let's shift a little bit. I'm curious what commitments you've made in your life that you no longer believe in.
Ooh. Oh my gosh, where do we start? Um,
I know, given that we were just talking about like relationships and family stuff.
yeah, exactly. Before the call, because it's all of that. Like I feel like my whole life was a commitment to a societal definition of success, and that included marriage, and a certain way to operate in marriage too. And it also included the career of healthcare, optometry, um, even like the financial success related to that. And I often share in the classroom that my now ex-husband and I, 16 years into our marriage, 16 years into our business together, 3 kids, on by society standards, we probably ticked off all the measures of success. And we got there and it was empty success for both of us. Like we literally felt like we were in survival mode building all of that for the 16 years, poked our head metaphorically above water and had room to breathe. And we looked at each other and we're like, who are you? Who am I? And how do we get here? And I don't believe in any of that anymore. Like I really, I believe on so many different levels that we are not meant to be workhorses. We are not meant to be valued by productivity, what we own, the money in our bank account. And even just, coming back to trauma and nervous system resilience, like the definition of nervous system resilience is easy activation of the nervous system and easy deactivation. So we're meant to mobilize and act. And this is related to what we talked about before our call too. And we're meant to rest and
Yeah.
regenerate, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But we're not taught anything about rest and regeneration. And so I believe in a much more simple life.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
also, even right now, and it's something I'm struggling with, um, and feel the pull towards, but I don't even believe in owning anything, owning land, owning property. It feels like I'm going to get myself into financial trouble down the road if I don't subscribe to these things we've been told we should have with mortgages. And yeah, so it's just like I've had to question everything that I did believe and everything I thought I knew. And I just constantly, as I settle into something that feels like, oh, this is true for me, I constantly feel that pull and the brush against, but like, oh no, you're not going to survive in the world with this.
Yeah.
And yeah, even the definition of relationships. And
Oh yeah.
after I, yeah, yeah,
Oh,
go
this
ahead.
is amazing. Yeah, this internal tension, I feel it. On the one hand, I can say mentally and emotionally, I'm doing what I can to crush the systems of oppression, like
Yeah,
capitalism, colonialism, patriarchy, all that. But then to exist in a world where those things are almost necessitate my existence, right?
yeah,
Like, how do
yeah,
you navigate it physically? I
yeah.
think emotionally and intellectually I can, but physically, how do I navigate that?
Yeah. And honestly, especially in North America, and it's part of, like you said, where in the world is Kristen?
Yeah.
I'm in North Carolina right now at my partner's place. Was in Canada for a few months, but I mostly live in Costa Rica. And we're looking at possibly moving to other Central American or South American countries. Ecuador is a place we're looking at because to live the way that we want to live in a more simplified, less connected to a capitalistic way of living, it feels like we geographically have to move
Yeah.
out of
Yeah.
North America to do that. And
Yeah.
to really find a cost of living, Costa Rica is really expensive, so it doesn't have it has the pace of life and the connection to nature that I'm looking for. Many people with shared um, desires around not living in these systems. Um, and then the whole piece of, being someone from North America moving to these countries, what impact am I having and
Oh yeah.
perpetuating?
Yeah.
All of that comes into play. But at the same time, it's like for my well-being and to really live the way that I want to live, I feel like I have to be out of North America to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Mhm.
agree with you.
Yeah.
Okay. I love this question. My assumption is that this is something that's rich and deep for you and you probably think about a lot. Because I imagine you couldn't be who you are if you didn't think about this question. The question is, who or what do you feel most grateful to have in your life?
Oh, wow. Hmm. Hmm. So many things come to mind. Um, my current partner, I just really feel like I've found, somebody that I can be in a healthy, non-codependent relationship with. Um, my children, I'll always be incredibly grateful for them. Um, and I'm so grateful for the community that I do have, the community that shares, like community like you, community of coaches, particularly coaches that have this added passion for coaching and personal
Yeah,
development at the intersection of social change. Um, and this new community I'm in the Thomas Hubel
yeah,
Yeah, it's a global community of people that are really like reframing how to do organizational work and to create organizations as healing places. And Amy Elizabeth Fox is one of the trainers also. And she said 20 years ago, never would have imagined that you could bring trauma restorative practices into organizations, and it's being done. Yeah, so it gives me hope. Yeah.
I love that you said community. That's
Mhm.
my word of the year, 2024. And I don't know, like I live in this world of like just seeking community and building it. I think it's something that is like automatic and natural because maybe because I grew up in Canada and
Mm,
that like, we have such a back in the 70s and 80s, we had such a communal worldview. We were
mm.
in it together. And community also means you don't love everybody in it, right? Like there are people in your community that you're like, okay, I can't stand you, but you're in my community. And so because of that, we have each other's back. So the community is almost stronger than the interpersonal relationship.
Yeah,
Grateful for that because I think they're nested and they overlap. And through community, we can spread messages, we can share peace, we can have more inclusive spaces
yeah, yeah,
without having like without this pressure of having to like love everybody, you know?
yeah. It's true, right? And that continues to be my growth edge, is that really when I'm faced with somebody who feels opposing to me or feels not inclusive, like when some of my top values get feel like they get stomped on or they don't get seen or heard or honored, it really is something that can like shut me down and send me
Totally.
into anger. And it's and then that's anti, to this work.
Yeah,
But it's so,
totally.
yeah, it's, yeah. So I love that you brought that in, but it definitely still is a growth edge of mine. I can still,
Yeah,
a
yeah, me too.
judgmental,
Yeah.
judgmental, fiery Scorpio can come out.
There it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, okay, what crossroads are you at right now in your life?
Oh my gosh. So many. Again, we briefly talked about it before. It's this big piece of figuring out where to live,
Yeah.
especially, having a partner of uh, from the US. I'm Canadian. We met in a different country, trying to figure that out from a legal standpoint, and also to the whole piece of like alignment with living my values
Yeah.
around how I want to live. Um, that's the biggest. And I didn't say that I was grateful for my parents, and I am grateful for my parents because that's another piece that comes into play. My parents are in Canada, my children are kind of all over, and trying to figure out who to be as an empty nesting mom that I thought I would handle so well. And it ends up 6 years in that still one of the biggest challenges that
Really? Oh my
yeah,
God.
yeah. It's just like, this, I love their independence. And at the same time, I want to be close to them and feel guilty too when I'm
Mm.
not close, but we're just at that stage of life that we're in different places.
Yeah.
And I'm also at a crossroads of how I define my work. As I learn more about trauma-informed practices and trauma restorative practices, I'm discerning how much of my work is still coaching and how much of it's evolving into something else, and how much I want to evolve into something else too, and what I
Yeah.
want to offer that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Part of the reason we asked that question is just a recognition that we're almost always at a crossroads.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
we don't always recognize the importance
Hmm.
of those decisions we're making that are actually, formative for the rest of our life. We make these decisions based on a single crossroad that
Yep.
we're, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, two more questions. Tell us about some of the challenges that you experience now to be in your rear view mirror.
God. I'm laughing because it, in this field of personal development. I know I've grown so much, and there's those threads that show
Oh,
up, yeah, that are forever lifelong learnings, and they're just learning at a deeper level. I'm like, oh, you again. Um,
oh my
so
God.
let's you can relate.
I have to tell you this. You and I have a mutual friend, Signe Wilson,
Yeah. Mhm.
also faculty with the Coaches Training Institute, a
Yeah.
dear friend, dear friend of mine.
Mhm.
And we've had the privilege of working together. I
Yeah.
learned recently that she knows how to read astrological charts. So she read my chart and she was like, yeah, this challenge that's in your life, no, it's going to keep coming up, Priya. Like, open your eyes. It's not going away. It's never going to be in the rearview mirror. I'm like,
Oh,
"Ah, thanks for the clarity."
yeah. That isn't it. It feels like sometimes something goes in the review mirror and we feel like, okay, it's done. And then all of a sudden it's ahead of us again or in the passenger seat with
Yes.
us. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And that piece that and of course, like you can probably relate, but and you're not the same person relating to it the same way. There's a deeper cut and a deeper learning around that. And for me, it's really around my voice and visibility. And there's a part of me that really just wants to be hidden and protect itself. Um, Relationships, as much as I do relationship work, relationships through my life have felt threatening in the sense that I've put myself aside, feeling like I need to be somebody else for those around me. And so, really having the courage to be myself, make my choices, um, is is my lifelong learning.
Yeah.
Yeah, and coming out of true codependent relationships and into healthy relationships. But something that's in the rear view mirror, I know there's lots of things, but it feels like some of them are so far away. It's like, what were those pieces? Um, because it's funny, like this is how I see myself, and people from the outside are always like, "Oh, you're so courageous, and you've done this and that, and I've changed careers, and I have done courageous things." And underneath that, there still is like this little girl that,
Mm.
yeah, just, you know, is afraid.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
For me, she is, sometimes she drives my bus and I'm in the
Oh,
passenger seat. And
yeah.
sometimes I'm like, okay, it's time for you, honey, to sit in the passenger seat so I can drive. But she's right beside me. Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
feel that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is the kind of the fun question that we ask everybody at the end of the interview.
Okay.
So we're right now we're in September, but I think this will be posted later in the year, like maybe November. But if
Mm-hmm.
you think about this month, what's a semi big decision you have to make this month? And I'm like chuckling inside because of what we were talking about before we got on the call.
Yeah. 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 I really do think it is it's not semi, it's big, is like, where am I going to live this winter?
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Yeah.
a big one.
Big. That's the thing. Like we ask this question and it always ends up being people will be like, well, I have to decide this. Oh, but actually it's a really big decision because it's going
Yeah.
to implicate all these other things in my life.
Yeah.
And okay, can I take a deep breath and just be like, how big is this decision? And
Yeah.
what is it going to take for me to make it is
Mhm.
actually, that's actually the work we have
Yeah.
to do,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And part of that for me is like, do I give up my residency in Canada?
Right. You
Yeah.
see? Yeah.
Hmm.
All the
Yeah,
incremental things that lead up to the big decision are the decisions.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
Amazing. You are beautiful and amazing, and your energy is so, I want to say healing, but that feels a little selfish to me, but you give me a lot just by
Mm.
being you.
Oh,
Is there anything else you'd like to share?
aw, I'm so honored, Priya, to have this time with you, to reach out. The last time we spent some time in the spring, you're like, "Oh, we've got to hang out more," and we do. I would love
Yeah.
for that to happen. Um, yeah, there's nothing else here other than thank you for this time. And it feels
Thank
like it's
you.
flown
You've
by.
given
Yeah.
me like when I say you've given me a lot, right? So just how you receive me
Mm,
is a gift, but also what you give in terms of your words, your energy, your language, and your insight.
mm,
I know I am biased. I'm someone who's biased towards insight. I'm always looking for the insight, the new thing, the thing that's going to make me grow. And I think this it came up a couple of times in our conversation, this trauma informed
mhm,
work and the somatic piece.
mhm,
Something I'm taking away from this conversation that is kind of tickling my brain is
mm.
wanting me to be more curious about it and to learn about it. So thanks for that gift. Thanks for the gift of your energy, which I started the day with like allergies and not feeling so good. And I was like, maybe we should postpone, but just being here with you reminds me, no, I'm glad we made the decision to be here together and
Yeah,
to do this because we never know
yeah.
how it's going to go. And
Exactly.
um,
Yeah. 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 And thank you with your patience for getting this on the calendar too, because I did postpone on you last time. So
it
I
happened.
appreciate that. Yeah.
I'm wishing you really, I'm wishing you clarity over the next
Mhm.
few weeks.
Thank
And
you.
like, hopefully, those spontaneous moments of clarity come to you so that you can make these
Yeah.
decisions and move through this current crossroad into your
Yeah.
next.
Well, and I'm wishing you peace and rest and smooth sailing through the rest of this year.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.